I want to thank the witnesses for your time and testimony. Senator Warner's testimony basically talked about the bill, or the goal of his bill was to basically show the taxpayer the money. And I want to come at this from a slightly different perspective from an agency head, a manager. Kind of the position I'm in here as now a new senator. You know, how do you manage this $3,800 billion a year beast? And so we're talking about information, and we're talking about how to utilize information to manage things. The question I have is, if, as a new agency head, what would be the #1 complaint a new agency head would come in to the agency with in terms of trying to get information to effectively manage their agency? I'd like to start with Mr. Darrow.
Well, I think, first of all, is getting timely, accurate information. I mean, years ago, before the passage of the Chief Financial Officers Act, there wasn't a reliable set of financial statements that somebody could look at. If you were a new head of an agency, you'd want to know, what the resources were.
How long ago was that?
That act effectively required in 1996, for the first time after 200 years of our operating our government, that there be financial statements prepared and independent audits made across the 24 largest departments and agencies. And then the government-wide consolidated financial statements were required beginning in fiscal year 1997. Now, most of the individual agencies now have audited financial statements that receive unqualified opinions, except for the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and we've yet been able to give an opinion on the government's consolidated statements.
So up until 1996, agency heads do not have accurate or timely financial information, by and large.
Not that was independently validated by anyone, and there's still difficulty getting timely information. Now, things are a lot better than they were before this started, so I don't want to imply that there hasn't been great progress made during that period of time, but that is still a challenge, particularly in some departments and agencies that are large departments and agencies, and DOD and DHS, that haven't passed that test yet.
Would both of you agree with that, or do you have a different perspective on that?
I agree. I think, I had the benefit of meeting and having first impressions from all the new chief financial officers that came into government at the beginning of this administration. And one of the reflections we learned in the first 100 days from those CFOs was a sense of how much data is available within their agency, just enormous quantities of data.
But no information.
But and no way to basically pull that information in a cost-effective way into presentations and business intelligence that can allow them to make the decision. And so it means that our data, and as Gene was describing, we've built a very robust framework for audited financial statements that's pulling a lot of this data into balance sheets and income statements. And unfortunately, the way it's working out is those statements, while they are important in a corporate environment, are not necessarily driving to clear decisions. We don't have deputy secretaries reading balance sheets and saying, aha, this is how I'm going to make a smarter decision. So the issue is, how do we pull that information into more user-friendly financial reports and program reports? To me, that's the #1 challenge. And there's been pockets of success across government, but it's not systemic across government, and that's what we really need to do.
Mr. Gregg, what's your perspective?
I agree with my colleagues. The only thing I'd add is that maybe not at the secretary level, but at the deputy secretary level, not having any really full cost accounting for programs. By and large, many programs don't know what the real cost, the full cost of the program is. I mean, we've lived so long in a budget world that being able to make judgments on whether to spend more money in one area or another, and what the return is not something that the federal government, I think, generally does very well.
I mean, coming from a business background, I mean, with the age of mini computers and microcomputers, I mean, this is actually pretty easy stuff from a business standpoint. How many different accounting systems do we have in the federal government? I mean, just a clue off the top of your head, is it?
Well, there's hundreds.
There's a lot, in particular the Defense Department has hundreds of systems just within the Defense Department. This is part of our challenge, and over the last decade we have worked to consolidate those financial systems into centers of excellence or shared service providers, but a lot more work is needed.
You can have different modular systems at the lower level, and then as we bring the information up to summary level, do we have common templates? Do we have common systems from that standpoint? I mean, I'm telling you, as a new senator, it drives me nuts. I'm an accountant. It drives me nuts that I can't get information.
It depends. I mean, there's the one of Danny mentioned centers of excellency. There's a administrative resource center that Public Debt, one of the Treasury offices, has that services for accounting and some other functions 60 or 70 government agencies, and they have followed the credo of everyone has to come in and use the same format. They're not going to specially design a basic accounting system for agency X or Y, and so they've been able to keep their costs down. They're very effective at what they do. I think, to me, that's the model that we need to expand across government on how we do accounting and other basic services.
So, Darrell.
Senator, we have a twin problem here that's very much impeding the ability to make effective decisions. On one hand, you have this problem that Mr. Gregg and Mr. Warford are outlining in terms of the accuracy and timely information cost systems. And the work we've been doing on overlap and duplication, what struck me is how many few programs have effectiveness studies done. So you don't know the cost, but you also don't know the effectiveness of many of these program activities. And lacking those fundamental building blocks, it's difficult to make decisions to make things more effective. So both of those areas are in need of attention.
Well, I was going to go exactly to that point in terms of basic metrics. When we start talking about duplicated programs, you know, how do you evaluate those things so that you can actually manage? And then the next step would be, how do you, as Senator Warner was talking about, everything is additive in this town. Let's pass a new bill. What about subtracting? You know, what is the process? Do we need legislation? Do we need a specific process to start eliminating things that are obsolete, that are not effective?
We've pointed out many areas that try to point the Congress in the direction of where there is a lot of overlap and fragmentation, which are, you know, real indicative indicators of duplication, and some areas where we found duplication. So we've provided, I think, a pretty effective roadmap to dig in, and then I think the burden should be on the agencies to demonstrate the value of those programs and why those programs are unique based upon looking at other programs and why they couldn't be consolidated. At a minimum, you can save a lot of administrative savings and in many cases use the program dollars more effectively.
Okay, thank you.
Senator, if I might just add one quick comment. I think my own view is that there's many opportunities to consolidate. In the office that I run, we're in the process of consolidating two bureaus, the Bureau of Public Debt and Financial Management Service. And both of those are well-performing organizations. But when we looked at it, we said there's a lot of overlap in accounting, there's overlap in administrative areas, and there's overlap in IT. And we're going to have, I think, tremendous benefits from the speed with which we can deliver services and cost reductions. So I think the opportunities are there.